This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about PlayStation's impressive PC game sales in 2024, Valve removing malware from their store, Xbox's plans for AI usage in gaming, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 72. I am your host, the man who is a product of generative AI, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who plays the starring role in the upcoming Yasuke simulator, Justin, better known as iamxeracon. How you doing today? How's your week been? I thought you would like that one.
Man. Oh, man. Yeah, I saw that game. Oh man. Yeah, I need to check that out some more. I heard about that, but I just
it comes out the same day as Assassin's Creed Shadows, so
oh, they knew what they were doing. But to answer your question though, my week has been pretty good overall, I'd say. So I actually last week I got some new equipment. So I got a new mic stand because the one I had before was just a Amazon Basics mic stand that I bought, and I really cheaped out on that. And I'm sort of starting to pay the price on that end, so I got a new microphone, new mic stand, a Hercules. What's the actual? Yeah, man, give me just a second here. Okay, yeah, it's a Hercules MS 533B, and this is actually a mic stand that I initially learned about back when I was studying audio engineering. And it's something that we got new, that was something that the studio got that was new. And I was like, oh, this is very interesting. And I thought it was cool because the fact that part of it is sort of like you can actually hide the boom mic within the stand itself. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I like the easy clamp that it has rather than just the regular type of twist dial. So I forgot all about it. And then as I was getting a new mic stand, I thought, what was the name of that mic stand years ago that I thought was really cool? So I got that. And additionally, my old headphones were starting to die out. They're not dead yet, but their audio is starting to fade a little bit. And so you might recognize these.
I thought those looked familiar. I was like, those look a lot like the ones that I'm using.
Yep. I remembered I had that in the back as a note somewhere. I said, eventually, when I get some new headphones, I remember you recommended these, and so I said, no, I think I'll go ahead and grab a pair. Now I haven't purchased the braided wire yet because I know you also mentioned about getting that. Right. I'll get that later on, but I thought just for right now I'll get the headphones, and yeah, so far pretty well, I must say. Now let's see what else happened. And so Sunday we had a very windy storm coming through the States, and it was quite nasty. I mean, some folks got it worse than we did. I mean, we had the power flicker out here and there, but I know that my sister, she lost power for most of the day, and I know that there were some trees that have been knocked down and power lines have been knocked down and whatnot, but fortunately nothing too serious on our end besides just like we lost power for probably about like a minute here and there. So that was okay. And then lastly, I bought some games on. Well, first off, you told me about Sonic being on sale on Instant Gaming, so I bought that. But then I also bought a few other games on there as well. And then also I saw there were some bundles on Fanatical that I went, and so I just got some games there. Feeding that ever-growing backlog. However, I did play one game from the bundle, which I'll talk about later on. So progress.
Okay.
But but yeah, that's actually the sum of my week.
Good stuff. Now let's see here. I have officially reached level 38 in real life.
Ooh.
So that was one of the things over the weekend. And I took advantage of that day and I did nothing but basically just video games the whole day. So that was, I mean, obviously I'll talk about the games I played a bit later, but yeah, I spent a lot of time playing games on Saturday, and then Sunday, so normally with church, even when we're not doing music, like I'll be in charge of the live stream, getting it, and we'll get audio equipment set up and everything, and like most of it is already basically set up. It's just making sure things are turned on, doing sound checks, and getting like the PowerPoint set up and things like that. But so we are on our way to church, get a text from our pastor, who's my brother-in-law, saying that they were considering canceling church because mostly because the roads were not great. They were a little bit on the icy side, and it was just bad enough to where they weren't quite sure. And so we find this out when we're about halfway to church, and we say, okay, well, please let us know as soon as possible, because if it's going to be canceled, we want to make sure we don't make coffee, because that's one of the things we do for setup in the morning. And as soon as we pull in, we get the text, church is canceled, which was a bummer. I mean, we ended up just streaming a different church service, but it's always like, we very rarely cancel. I think actually this is probably the only Sunday that they've canceled since we started this church. So, but yeah, it was kind of a bummer. What was more a bummer was for one of my friends there. He was in charge of bringing donuts that morning, and of course he pulled in just after we did.
Ooh.
And I had to tell him, hey, church just got canceled. So he had all those donuts. He ended up coming over, and we had a little bit of fellowship together, and he brought some of the donuts so the kids could have some donuts, and the rest of them, like most of them, I gave him some gallon-sized freezer bags, and he could just put them in his freezer to save them for stuff. Like he also hosts our men's breakfast thing that we have Tuesday mornings at his house. So I told him, hey, you could stick those in the freezer, because I usually make the breakfast, but if he sticks those in the freezer, we can use them and make donut breakfast sandwiches the next time we meet. So it works out either way, I of course smoke all the bacon for that, and which is like a normal thing we have every week, and then I'll do whatever else, but he'll cook the bacon, and then he hosts, because he's a single guy, he doesn't have to worry about pets or kids or anything like that. So next time when we meet, because we also ended up having to cancel Tuesday because we had a snowstorm coming in. Next time we meet, we'll be able to do donut breakfast sandwiches, and those are really, really good. So yeah, but anyway, so there was that, and then my wife unfortunately got sick again. This time it's a cold. I think she's most of the way over it at this point, but yeah, it's like this is the third time she's been sick in the past like 2 months, and that's really unusual. I think it's partially because kids are more exposed from doing like homeschool co-op stuff, and so it's just like one more source. Thankfully I didn't get the last thing that she and my oldest son got, but and we'll see whether or not I catch the cold that she has. Thankfully we're not doing music this week, because everything basically just got pushed back a week, so I'll be doing it the 2nd. But this next week, the same guy who was going to do it this past week to cover for me on my birthday weekend, and also because I had covered for him previously, he'll just be doing it this week, so that works out. But also got my next cooking video done and published today, and then I've done the bulk of the work on the Hellblade comparison. It's basically just at this point I just have to do the second half of it because I already did all the video portion. Now it's just going through cutting up the sound and adding the graphics to make sure that it indicates properly, you know, when the sound is one source versus the other. But yeah, so that's planning to go up next week. But otherwise, oh yeah, so the storm that I mentioned, we got a big snowstorm that started at like 5:30 yesterday morning, went till about 11 o'clock at night. So we got, technically it was roughly about 6 inches of snow, but because it was also very windy, a lot of the snow drifted to where we basically had a foot of snow in between our garage door and our cars. And so I got all that shoveled between my lunch break and then after work. And man, I wish I had my old snow shovel. The one I had in Alaska was great. I had that one for years and it worked really, really well because it has like a curved handle to it, which just made it easier to get that leverage. And it was also like a bigger shovel. The one I got, I had to order from Amazon a couple years ago, and I think I've only used it like twice since we've been here, and we've been here now for almost 4 years. But yeah, the one I don't particularly like, the one we have. It's a little slow when you're dealing with a lot more snow, and I mean, it still works. Speaking of which, pro tip, if it's not something you already figured out, it may just be that I'm dumb and it took me too long to figure it out until someone showed me. But if you're ever in a position where you have like multiple inches of snow on your vehicle, easy way to take care of that is if you have one of those big push brooms, you know, with the thick bristles on it. Works great for getting that off. Way better than using a brush, because like you can use the snow brush and it's like that's fine when you're just dealing with a little bit of snow. But when you have like a thick layer of it, having that push broom makes it so much faster. You can just push it off and you're golden, especially when it's still like really powdery. Of course, when you're dealing with wet snow, it doesn't do nearly as well, but it's still better than using the little hand brush thing. So, but yeah, someone showed that to me probably like 10 years ago, and I've been doing that ever since when I've been in that situation. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it for my week.
Nice, and happy belated birthday
Thank
to
you.
you, sir. Sir.
All right. Well, what have you been playing this past week?
All right, so one of the games that was in the bundle was a game called Time Rift, and it is a puzzle. It's a puzzle game essentially, but man, it's really hard to just describe the game. But if you're watching the video version of the podcast, essentially you are a triangle that is moving around, going from one part of the stage to the exit, and essentially you're constantly being attacked by a wall that will kill you upon impact, and you need to navigate around the entire part, because essentially what this is you're a hacker, and this is you hacking servers, even though that's not really how hacking works, but hey, take liberties there. And essentially you're trying to hack through, and you're trying to manipulate the servers, which is how you're doing stuff like changing the direction you're moving in, and also hitting different nodes that are essentially gates that you can open. And even if you happen to die, it's not that big of a deal, because you can easily rewind to go back. And essentially later on, actually, like halfway through the game, there are times where you actually need to die as part of a mechanic. Because when you rewind it, there are certain nodes and gates that don't regenerate when you rewind. So you need to die, rewind, and then they'll be gone once you do that. So it's definitely very interesting. It's not too long of a game, because I actually managed to beat it already and get the achievements. It took me about 5 hours, though someone probably could get it done sooner because there were 2 puzzles in particular that were just very irritating, and I was having a hard time solving them. And one of them I didn't solve until I put the game down for the night and came back the next day. And when I played it again, I saw, why didn't I think about doing this before? So all in all, it's pretty good. It gets a little bit tricky during the last, I'd say, 6 stages, but I mean, I guess that's something to expect with puzzle games getting progressively harder, but not too bad, I'd say. Next game I played was called Scars Above. Now, this wasn't from a bundle, but this is something that I've had in my backlog for a while. And this is actually a game that some years ago, before it actually came out, I played the demo on Steam, and it seemed interesting enough. It's kind of a third-person Souls-light, because while there are a few elements that are from a Souls game, it's not overwhelmingly a Souls game, I'd say. Like, for one thing, you do have sort of like the bonfires where you rest at and enemies respawn when you do so. However, when you die, even though you go back, you don't have any types of souls that you drop. So it's not like there's any sort of penalty when you die. You really just go back and continue doing what you're doing. And also one thing I'll mention is the fact that the recording that you see is actually recorded from my Steam Deck, and that the performance is pretty well, I must say. I wasn't expecting it to do well at all. So when I booted up the game, I went and tried out the settings. I set it at everything at medium except for textures that I left at high. Disabled motion blur, and I think turned off depth of field, but everything else was set at medium. When you start the game on the initial spaceship, it's running at 90 frames per second, which I'm very impressed, and I did not expect the game to run that well. When you land on the planet, though, that's when the frame rate really starts to fluctuate quite a bit. It goes from just under 60 at maybe around 57, and it jumps up to 85. So essentially what I did was I just capped it at 60, and it's pretty much staying there most of the time. There might be a few dips here and there, but other than that, it's pretty consistent, I'll say, overall. So I'm very impressed that the game is running this well on the Steam Deck. And as far as the story goes, you're essentially part of a team of researchers who are trying to investigate a space anomaly, and after you investigate it, you get transported into this planet, and you're not unsure of what's going on. The combat is pretty decent, I'll say. You essentially just either have a melee blade, which is pretty weak, or you just have your gun that shoots 4 different types of ammo. So far I've only found 3, but you have like electric bolts, you have a flamethrower, and you have sort of an ice grenade launcher, which essentially just freezes enemies and whatnot, and also freezes water, so you can walk in paths that that are dangerous to traverse otherwise. Sometimes it feels hard trying to figure out like what you're supposed, or how you're supposed to handle enemies, just because of the fact that you can be ambushed at any time, because enemies will just jump out of the ground and catch you by surprise. But after a while, you can sort of get used to it. So far, it's not too bad, and I think it's pretty decent. I might play some more of this, but so far, I'm definitely enjoying it. And then the last game I played was just some more Power World. I haven't played that in a while. And primarily I just played it to get some game footage, but I did notice that there were some new stuff that was added to the game. So for one, whenever you enter an area, you actually gain XP from that. Before, that didn't happen. So even if you've previously visited an area, if you go back now into the area, it'll treat it as if though you've visited for the first time. Nice. So you get some experience from that, which is pretty cool. I faced some of the new bounty bosses. So I mean, I've been going around there taking it out a few at a time, and they don't seem to pose too much of a threat. Even the ones that are not too far from my level, but close enough that I thought they might be more of a threat. But they went down pretty easily. Now, one thing that I don't know what happened here. I don't know if this is something that happened in a patch or if it's just the way I manage things, but food production on my base was abysmal. Like when I went to the base to restock on ammo, I saw that there was no food at all. And I thought I had things set up where my pals would farm enough food so that the way they can feed themselves, go back to work, and I can have food so I can bring it with me. But apparently not, so I had to manage my pals, and I think even remove a few from my base that were possibly just eating more food than I needed. So I just put them in storage, and then also just worked on trying to manually farm and help produce more food, so that way eventually things should be stable where I won't be needed around to manage that. But yeah, that's essentially everything I've done with that. And that is it for me.
All right. Well, I just have well, I guess I have a couple things I want to comment on. First of all, Scars Above. Watching that gameplay honestly just made me think we have Returnal at home. Because it did kind of remind me of Returnal, at least in terms of like the vibe and stuff. I mean, obviously it doesn't look anywhere near as good as Returnal. And it's not a roguelite. So, but yeah. Still looked like it would be pretty decent. Like I'd spend a couple dollars on that and try it out. But I mean, I think just looking at it, it looks like it has the potential to be a game that would actually be pretty good, despite being pretty generic in its visuals. But yeah, and then Time Rift. So the thing about this being like what you're doing when you're hacking a computer or whatever, I think of it as this is not the thing that you're actually doing while hacking, but this is what's actually happening inside the computer that you can't see. That's how I would look at it. But it looks like something that would actually be pretty interesting. So, and I like puzzle stuff always. So definitely something I would consider checking out sometime. But yeah, that's really all I had in terms of comments on that front. All right. So as for me, get a couple smaller things out of the way first. I don't have gameplay recorded for some of these, because even though I don't mention it most weeks, I typically will play either Lego games or Mario Party, sometimes both with my kids. I did play more Lego games with my kids. Finished up Lego Harry Potter completely now, or rather, completely in terms of we finished all the story. We haven't gotten 100% on everything. We're not going to, because honestly, it's just too much of a hassle. I find that I don't like having to replay the levels a bunch of times in order to get all the objectives done. That's just super annoying to me. I always, it's like, it's one thing if you have to replay it a second time, but if you have to replay it multiple times, it's just annoying. And I mean, theoretically, could just go through the levels once each, and with the right characters, it would be possible to complete them all, but I don't know. And so, yeah, we finished that. I think the next game that my son wants to play together is probably going to be Lego City Undercover, but I'm not positive on whether he wants to do that or something completely different. So I'll check with him on that this weekend. And then Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga. We have 2 chapters left in Return of the Jedi, and then that's it. So we're very nearly done with that. And my daughter, we're working on Lego The Hobbit, and we're still pretty early in the game. I mean, I think we've done probably like 4 or 5 of the missions so far, so not super far into it. That one's excuse me. That one's kind of weird because, well, for one, like, before I started playing these other Lego games, I was so used to like Lego City Undercover, where you have the talking and everything, and these older Lego games don't have any talking. And so then going back to one where they do have the talking is just weird for me. Especially because this one, I think that they basically just pulled all the audio directly from the movie, because it doesn't seem like it's voice acted stuff. It seems like it's all, you have all the original voices doing everything. So I think they literally just pulled the audio directly from the movie for all the cutscenes and stuff. But yeah, and it seems like this one they tried to make it more expansive. I mean, apart from, the obvious normal stuff that they do with Lego levels where they add things to make it more than what the movie, or show or whatever was. But yeah. But beyond that, after we talked about it last week, I went ahead and installed Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed on my PC. I played a bit by myself, but I played quite a bit with my middle son as well, just because I wanted to see. Well, first of all, I couldn't remember how many players you could play with on the PC version, and it looks like you can do up to 4. And oh man, this game is so good. It's so good. I mean, there's like a nice variety of different stuff to do with the races, and there's just a lot of content for single player, but all of it feels like it doesn't just feel like it's all just one thing, like with Mario Kart, it's basically you have the races and you have battle mode, and that's it. This one, you have like a bunch of different types of races. The tracks are, honestly, I think the tracks are amazing. Even without being familiar with a lot of the Sega franchises that the tracks are based on, I just find that the tracks are super great. And of course, having the different transform mechanics, switching between car, boat, and jet or plane or whatever, is really cool. And I mean, some aspects are a little more generic, like the power-ups particularly, but otherwise it's just like, this is all really good stuff. The tracks are great. The different characters are great. Depending on which version you play, it has like different exclusive characters. The PC version has like a character from Total War and character from Team Fortress 2, and has Wreck-It Ralph, which I don't think is in any of the other versions. And what else? Oh, there's also I can't remember what other ones there were, but yeah, there's something from Football Manager. So it's like just random characters. But this gives me hope. I'm really hoping that with the next Team Sonic, or I mean with the next Sonic racing game that's coming out, because they're Sega owned franchises, that they'll do like some stuff with Persona and or Shin Megami Tensei. That would be super cool. I could see them definitely doing that. So I'm hoping they do something like that, because it'd just be fun. But I think one of the things I like best about this game is that you also, each racer, you can like level them up, and as you level them up, you gain different types of carts that you can use. And I mean, yeah, obviously like Mario Kart, you have different parts that you can use for your carts, and different types of carts that makes a difference in how things handle and all that. But so that part in and of itself is not necessarily unique, but I like having the level up thing, because it's like, okay, I fully leveled up this character, okay, I'll try out this character. Like, it gives incentive to use different characters and try them out. I know, like, I had maxed out quite a few of them on the Wii U version, and this one I've only maxed out like I think 3 maybe, and I'm just kind of little by little playing with other characters. But then yeah, there's like different types of races you do. Like, there's one where you try to get to the end of the race, and you have basically 3 lives. So it's kind of like a battle mode, but has the racing in it as well. But if you, I mean, anyone who loses all 3 of their lives, gets eliminated from the race. And in the end, it's really whoever crosses the finish line, but if you eliminate all the people before crossing the finish line, then you just win. So unfortunately that one, because of the fact that I'm trying to do it on the highest difficulty, or at least the highest that's currently available, which is A rank, so that I can get more stars, which enables me to unlock more things in world tour mode more quickly. Then that mode in particular took me quite a few tries to get one of the races done. But anyway, yeah, there's just nice variety of different kinds of races, and I have not installed it on the Steam Deck yet, even though I know I did install it back when I got my original Steam Deck briefly. It's been a long time, but it did or what I'm trying to say, in terms of performance, this game is locked at 60 frames per second. That's the max it goes up to. You can get above that by removing VSync on the NVIDIA side of things on the control panel. And when I did that, I was able to get 240 frames per second. However, it also had really bad screen tearing, and so I ended up just turning it off and sticking to 60. But it also felt better at 60 than it did at 240, just because of the screen tearing. So I haven't been able to find anything online on how to get both, get it without the screen tearing, but it is what it is. I mean, like I said, it still feels great at 60, and it's a really fun game. I really, really enjoy it, and I may end up playing that more with my kids and or just, playing some more on my own here and there. But then, of course, I also played some more Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I ended up playing probably like 5-6 hours of that on Saturday, give or take. Like I couldn't tell you exactly how much. I'm done with chapter 7. I think I'm partway into chapter 8 right now. I just got to Gold Saucer, and I've done like a handful of the mini games and stuff, and it's been great, of course. Trying to think what there is really to say about that. Still performs amazing, or like I'm really happy with the performance and happy with the visuals 9 times out of 10. But yeah, it's good stuff. What was I going to say about that? Shoot, there was something specific on my mind regarding this game. Oh, that's right. I was going to say the music that plays when you are climbing Coral Mountain, so good. So good. Like I'm definitely going to have it included in the podcast this week, as background music, because it's like a really good song, and it didn't sound familiar from the original game, but it's been a long time, so maybe that was just one, because Coral Mountain was not like a long area. It was one where I didn't notice it as much, but there's enough of the stuff that's very familiar to me to where it's not necessarily, I guess you could say, an issue from that standpoint. So but then a game that I had not specifically planned to play, but really started playing because of how much I did not enjoy playing Trek to Yomi, is Neo. And so I started that one up on my Steam Deck. That's actually the only place I played it, and I've been loving it. So I'll say, first of all, even though the game is listed as unsupported, even with the default settings, which is like lower visuals, I mean, with the default settings, it runs at 60 frames per second, no problem. I turned up the settings to maximum, and it still runs at 60 frames per second, no problem. And I just really, really like this game. I think I put about 14 hours into it since last Thursday, I think is when I started playing it. So of course this is a Souls-like. It was originally a PlayStation exclusive, then came to PC, I think in 2019, I want to say. I mean, of course it's not, first party Sony game, so not as big of an issue from that standpoint, or, as big of a deal from that standpoint. So let's see here. Try to explain differences here. I will say the initial tutorial area that you go through, much like, in Dark Souls, where Dark Souls does something very similar. There's no like Souls mechanic per se. I mean, there's still, when you go to a shrine and heal up, then, enemies respawn, but there's no like souls in that initial area that you actually acquire. And this game is called Amrita, but there's nothing like that in the initial area. And then you have like a mission structure. And so far I've completed all the way through the first mission, and I got to the boss in the second mission, and I haven't been able to beat her yet. I ended up restarting the area because I was just kind of short on some resources that I needed in order to better fight her. Nice thing is that I think it's kind of nifty over Dark Souls is that you can redo missions as much as you desire. So like if you want to go back and just grind through an area again, you can do it again. I don't know if there's like any rare drops that you get from bosses that you could, retry for, but like I have redone this first area. I ended up redoing it at one point, mostly because there was like one of the collectible things that you find is like a spirit that gives you certain boons that you can use, like increasing the amount of Amrita that drops or increasing the amount of health potions that drop, things like that. But I hadn't found all of them the first time through, and so I went back through again and redid the whole mission for that. And of course, it went a lot faster the second time through. But haven't quite finished the second area yet. Right now, I'm working on going through it over again. Let's hear what else. So, mechanics-wise, some differences here. One thing is that basically you have different weapon classes, which is, similar to Dark Souls and all that. And then there's you get loot dropping frequently. I would say more frequently than you do in Dark Souls. And you have like, spears and double swords and single swords. I can't remember the name of the weapon, but it's like a sickle on a chain. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but that's another weapon option. I haven't tried messing with it at all. Axes and unlike in Dark Souls, the weapons are not as unique between the different classes. So like, Dark Souls you'll have like a Zweihander and a Gladius and the Berserk sword, whatever that, I can't remember if that's just called a great sword or what in Dark Souls. I don't remember offhand, but anyway, so you'll have the different weapon classes, and then you basically just get, sometimes different perks on the weapons, or different some that are more powerful and rarer than others and all that, but it doesn't really seem like there's any like unique weapons. It's just basically you get, maybe a stronger version of this weapon or whatever. I've been basically using since the beginning the spear and the dual swords, dual katanas. So it's spear I do for anything that's longer range, and then dual katanas for anything that's closer range, or like when I'm fighting an enemy that's wielding a spear. And there's different stances that you use, and of course, if you've already played this game before, then all this is review to you, but I'm just talking about this mostly for anybody who's listening. And So yeah, there's different stances. You have the high stance, the mid stance, and the low stance. And like high stance is your attacks are stronger, but they also take up more of your ki, which is stamina equivalent. Um, and then you have the mid stance, which is pretty well balanced, and that's what you start with when you're playing like the tutorial. You're only in mid stance. And you have low stance that is faster attacks that are weaker, and it does more like, I guess it's a bit more defensive for the most part, but because of the fact that it's so uh, because of the attacks are so much weaker, it's not really as effective from that standpoint. But it is an option. So these are all entirely optional. It's not like, oh, you have to use a certain stance against a certain enemy. It's possible that in the future I'll find that some enemies it's better to use certain stances, but I'm pretty much like about 50-50 between using the high stance and the mid stance, just because mid stance it has that good balance, but high stance is good for dealing more damage, especially when I'm dealing with some of the tougher enemies in the current area where I am. And there's some enemies that you have that don't respawn, at least that they don't respawn unless you go back to the mission after completing it. And then of course there's lots of other enemies that obviously respawn, shortcuts you can open, that sort of thing. It's not all interconnected like Dark Souls, but it is just all, you have one big area for each mission, and then as you go through you'll unlock shortcuts and that sort of thing to make it easier to get back to the shrines and so on and so forth. There is an item that I find really nifty, and I guess when I think about it, it's not altogether different from a Homeward Bone, except that it's much more rare, and that allows you to or wait, no. Okay, so there's two things. There's one item that's basically the equivalent of a Homeward Bone that lets you warp back to the last shrine you were at with everything intact. There's another item that allows you to call back the spirit that you have, which is basically like allows you to do a magical attack, but if you die, the spirit will be guarding your Amrita that you dropped. And so, but then you can't use the spirit at all, which means you can't do that special attack until you get back to it. So like but there's an item you can use that allows you to call back the spirit with all of your Amrita in tow, so you don't have to worry about losing all that. And actually it might be more like 75% that it brings back, but realistically sometimes, like when it comes to when you're fighting a boss, sometimes it's just easier, okay, I'm just going to use that. I mean, I've only, like I said, this is a more of a rare item, so it's not something where you can use it all the time, otherwise it would just be way too easy. But it's been useful the couple times that I've used it after being in a boss room. Then the times when I haven't had the option and I've just been needing to level up, I'll go to the boss room, pick up the Amrita, and then warp back to the shrine so I can use it to level up, rather than just letting it go to waste. But I feel like I'm forgetting something. But yeah, I was just like, I'm really, really loving this game. I don't really have much of anything negative to say about it. I mean, I'm super impressed with the performance. The fact that it's 60 frames per second and looks great on the Steam Deck. Doesn't appear there's a way to unlock the frame rate, but realistically with the Steam Deck, I mean, I'm perfectly content with just 60. 60 is great. If I install it on my desktop, which I may, at the very least, I would probably install it on my desktop when it comes to Extra Life. Then if I do that, then I would probably try to see if I can unlock the frame rate, because I'm sure this game could probably run at 240 without any difficulty, or at least close to. So, but yeah, I don't think I really have anything else to say about it. Just, I'm loving it. But yeah, that's all my games.
Okay. So let me actually quickly check something, because Maybe I'm thinking of Neo 2, because I thought there would have been an uncapped frame rate, but I could be wrong here. It might just be Neo 2 that I'm thinking of, so I'm just quickly checking the Steam page. Yeah, it might just be Neo 2 because I'm not seeing anything here about uncapped frame rate here. But that's fine, I guess. But yeah, definitely glad that you're enjoying it. And actually, let me ask you your question on this. What do you think about the loot drop system, and essentially the only way to get better weapons is to just constantly, I guess, farm for them, rather than, say, improving a weapon via enhancements?
Well, you can improve a weapon. At least you can like use another. You can get it to match to the level of a higher level weapon. It's just I mean, how frequently you can do that? It's basically like if you're in the mission, then you can't do anything. But when you're done with the mission, you can do that at the blacksmith. And it's I would say as an overall thing, I'm kind of mixed on it, really, because I like the fact that I don't necessarily have to. I mean, I guess, I could see the farming being annoying, but for the most part, I just haven't worried about it. I've just basically been, like, I've mostly been using the same spear for quite a while, and I think at one point I did end up leveling it up using that soul match thing, but otherwise it's, I mean, it's been fine. I just don't get a whole lot of great drops. Usually the ones I get are worse than what I already have, so I end up just offering them to the shrine thing and then keep using what I'm using. Like there's there's a DLC item that comes with the complete edition that is a samurai helmet with a valve on it, and that's what I've been using the whole time. Although after a while I did end up making it so that the helmet is hidden, just because I kind of like the look of the main character, without it. But yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'll definitely need to look into the enhancements because either I overlooked that or I just forgot about it because I honestly kept thinking that I had to constantly just find new items similar to something like, say, Borderlands, where where the point is in order to get better gear, you have to find it. And that's something that kind of got me out of the game because I wasn't really fond of having to get better items solely through farming and hoping that I get the drop that I want or getting a better drop than what I currently have. Yeah, that was one of the things that I really wasn't fond with the game. Granted, I probably should get back to it, especially since you said that it runs at 60 FPS on the Steam Deck, which is better than the performance I was getting before, where it was maybe I'll get 60 FPS, and when I do, it's probably going to be about 70% of the time. So, I mean, granted, now if I played on desktop, I wouldn't have that problem. But just originally, when I was playing the game, it wasn't that consistent. So, I'll definitely look back into trying this again. Eventually, I'll say.
Yeah.
But definitely glad that you're experiencing that. And you said that got through the first chapter. So is that the oh man, which boss is she again?
Well, he was the on
sorry.
Miyoki, or however you pronounce it. I can't remember the actual name. It's something along those lines, but it's like a demon that's inside of a ship with like two balls and chains.
Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about now.
I'll double check my settings here, make sure that I'm not forgetting something, because I might have changed something. Like, I know that there weren't a ton of settings available, but I know that I definitely modified a couple things, or at least I think I did. I know that, like, I had all the textures at the highest possible and shadows and so on and so forth. But yeah, the game runs great. I mean, it has crashed on me twice, but only twice, and in 14 hours, that's really not bad. obviously I prefer that it doesn't crash at all, but I mean, at least it wasn't in the middle of anything major. I did lose a little bit of progress when it crashed on me the couple times, but I'm enjoying the game enough to where it didn't bother me too much. All right, let's look and see here. Yeah, I turned off ambient occlusion, motion blur, and have dynamic reflections enabled. Have shadows and rendering resolution at high. Screen resolution, I just have it 720p. Oh wow, you can do rendering up to 4K. I'd be curious trying to run it at 4K on the Steam Deck. I can only imagine that would be bad. I do think though that it could be interesting to try to do it at 4K on my PC. That could be really interesting.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, because I should be able to get 4K 60 without a problem. Potentially 4K 120, but see here, yeah, high, yeah. So yeah, and then the frame rate cap is 60 and 30 are the only options. So, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, basically the maximum settings apart from resolution being 720, though the footage I recorded that's displayed on screen was actually recorded in 800p because I forgot to change it so that it would be 720 specifically for having the recording on the video. But yeah, I really like this game. I like it a lot. And after as much as I was disappointed with Trek to Yomi, this game is completely making up for it.
Yeah, that's definitely good to hear. And one more question I have regarding Neo. Mm-hmm. So I haven't done any replays of the missions. Mm-hmm. If you replay a mission, are the shortcuts still open, or do you have to open them up?
You have to reopen all the shortcuts when you replay a mission. There is like a submission that opens up after you finish the mission, and I did do that, and that was just basically a short mission that you do with like a smaller boss to deal with. Nothing as big as the main bosses. But yeah, the boss I'm currently stuck on is it's like this vampire lady basically that flies around and shoots sonic waves at you that paralyze you, and she's annoying. So, but I think the first time I fought her, I got pretty close to beating her, or like I probably got her down like 66%, give or take. But then since then, I haven't been having as much luck, mostly because even when using like the spirit attack, she can still grab you and interrupt you in the middle of that. And it's like, that's a way. I mean, I like doing the spirit thing towards the beginning of the fight because it's a way to knock off a good chunk of health before the rest of it goes. But yeah.
Okay. And then backing up some, so with the Sonic Racers, All-Star Transformed, one of the questions I had is, so with the single player mode, is that a campaign like the older Sonic racing games, or is that just like your type of Mario Kart, just like, I guess you could say, just the basic racing game, or the additional modes that come with the game?
So I don't know how it compares to the older Sonic racing game because I haven't played the older one. But this one, it's basically just, it's like a branching path that you have different types of races, and as you complete one, depending on the level you complete it, you get number of stars that you can use, and then use those stars to unlock additional characters, unlock additional tracks, and then as you're going through, it has the different types of objectives for different races, some of them being just regular races, and then some of them being the alternate things like a drift challenge, for example, or there's one where it's just boosting and there's no items at all in the race, so it's entirely that. and there's a couple. Oh, there's like one where you have to avoid the police and um, stuff like that.
And are the alternate races, or are any of them, say, character dependent, or are they just open to
I
any
don't
character?
think they are, but it's been a while since I've done any. I mean, like I haven't done as much of this game in quite a while, um, and I didn't play a whole lot when I played this weekend.
Okay.
But so far, they haven't been character dependent from what I played this weekend. I don't remember otherwise, but I'm pretty sure you can do them with any character you want.
Okay. Well, that's good then. Man, I might see eventually if I about trying this game, because
I mean, you might as well. You got it.
I might as
You got it for cheap, and it is a lot of fun. I mean, it's way better as a single player game than Mario Kart, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, granted, I didn't play like Mario Kart DS, so I can't comment on the single player mode in that, and I've heard that was pretty good, but I just think this one is way better as a single player game, and as a multiplayer game, it's just more fun, even if the items are more uninspired.
Okay. All right. Oh, and one last question. Because when you mentioned this, I was very confused. Does Lego Undercover actually have a two-player mode? I thought that was
Yeah,
one player.
it
Oh,
has
really?
has multiplayer.
Okay. Wow.
I mean, it's you're both playing as Chase, but
Right.
yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I think it's only 2 players, but it's possible there's more than that.
Okay. Cool. 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 All right, then that is the last question that I have.
All right, good stuff. All right, so we're gonna get into the news, but first of all, I want to mention is that I want to try doing something a bit different going forward with the podcast, just for the sake of kind of mixing things up, because some of the stories we cover, it's just like I don't really have a whole lot of thoughts on it. I feel like we're just kind of going through the motions sometimes. So, what we're going to be doing, in addition to covering some news topics, is we're going to start doing other discussion topics, just questions about gaming or whatever else in general. At the moment, we don't have any necessarily being sent to us directly, but um, the question that I have, at least, that we'll be covering a bit later, is just something that was sent to Married to the Games through their Discord, and I thought it was an interesting question to discuss. So, and potentially something else from Justin as well. So we'll get to that. But first, we'll talk about news topics, some of the bigger stuff. So first of all, PlayStation just released their financials for 2024, and they generated $865 million in first-party PC sales for the year of 2024. Now, before we get into thoughts specifically, the one thing I do want to ask, in addition to just your general thoughts on this, is what you think this could potentially indicate for the future of PlayStation first-party games on PC. So, give it to me.
Oh, so answer. Oh, so this now before the general
Well,
discussion.
we can do both. I
Okay.
just cover both topics at the same time. For that.
Okay. All right. So what this means, I guess you could say, regarding the future of PlayStation first-party titles. I mean, the fact that the screenshot here mentioned that this was primarily attributable to Helldivers 2 as well as ports released on Steam. One of the things mentioning that there is the fact that Helldivers 2 was also released on PC as well. Day one at that. So the fact that essentially a good chunk of the sales came from PC, I mean, I think that it really shows that Sony really understands that PC is not an option anymore. It's really more so something they have to do. They have to take into consideration. They have to develop for it. They have to put their games in there because they're not really going to be getting these types of numbers without PC. And I mean, sure, they've generated revenue from ports, remasters on, PlayStation on the PlayStation's end, but other than that, though, and I mean, think about the fact that as far as completely new releases go, they've been really stagnant these past few years. It's primarily just remasters or remakes of games that have already come out. So, I mean, I think the last completely brand new game was either God of War Ragnarok or Spider-Man 2. I don't remember which one came out last. But it was just those two games. Everything else has just been ports or remasters. So I think that as far as the first party titles go, we're probably going to get much closer to day and date than, possibly was previously stated. Maybe within a year, I would say. But we might get to a point where games could come out maybe within 6 months, I'd say. Just because I can't remember where. I thought I saw, it wasn't here, but I thought I saw somewhere else, like there was a statement. I can't remember who made the statement, but essentially PlayStation, I can't remember. They saw that they want to start trying to get into the Chinese market, and they noticed that there is a growing market share of PC gamers in the Chinese market. And so as a result of that, they're also going to want to focus more on PC because of the fact that that's a growing market there. And if they want to get into the Chinese market, they have to get into the PC market as well.
Yep.
So it's really unavoidable at this point. And regardless of how any type of PlayStation fanboy feels, Sony is going to double down on PC because it's just not that much of an option. And especially, if they want to if they want to make up for these big budget games that they're making, having them being exclusive is, it might work out well, but they can't make that much of a gamble. They want to really get back on their investment, so they have no choice essentially but to put the games on another platform, i.e. PC, just to make sure that there's a chance that they can earn back what they put out there. So that's how I feel about. I guess, I mean, it's a long-winded statement, but I guess that's my answer to the question you had. But then I guess just as in general, how I feel about this. I mean, I guess it still kind of connects back to it. It's the fact that, again, a large portion of this, of course, we don't know what the percentage is exactly, but considering the fact that, again, it said that ports on Steam and Helldivers 2 were the main factors to these sales, it shows that PC was a main factor. And because what was it? Was it about, it was roughly 50-50 sales for Helldivers 2 and
No, it was 60-40 PC over PlayStation.
Wow. So yeah, so
Actually,
essentially,
I think it was
PC
over 60%, or it was either over 60% or just under 60%. I can't remember.
Okay. So that being said, PC has been carrying a good portion of PlayStation, essentially, considering the fact that, they said it was mainly attributable to Helldivers 2 as well as the ports released on Steam. That means that a good chunk of the $865 million is PC money. So again, Sony can't.
Well,
scoff
all
at
of it
PC.
is PC money. That 865 million is just
Oh,
PC.
all of this.
That's just PC. And let me look at the tweet again. Let's see here. It was well, I guess it's non-PlayStation platforms, but considering the fact I say that the vast majority of that is PC. I mean, the primary attribute is PC ports on Steam and Helldivers 2. So,
Okay,
but I
okay,
mean,
never mind then.
the only stuff that was PlayStation published content off of PlayStation, other than PC, was Lego Horizon Adventures on the Switch and MLB The Show, which is on both the Xbox and Switch.
Okay. Okay, so that definitely changes things, but I still think that, I mean, still and I think even essentially if you look at just, just look at the fact that now that changes how I see things. The fact that the sales went up 71%, I think really shows that still there is a good market here that Sony needs to invest in and just, continue to support. And also, hopefully this also shows Sony that maybe because as a result of this, we shouldn't try to shoehorn PSN, because we could hurt ourselves in the long run. And of course, Sony has started to backpedal on their stance regarding PSN. And also, hopefully, that means that they'll ease on restrictions in other countries where it's a requirement. But still, it just shows that Sony definitely needs to keep going in on PC because it's really helping them out a whole lot.
I agree. So in terms of my overall thoughts on this, I think it is a great thing that these games have made some good profits for Sony, because it should encourage them to, double down, like you said, to keep putting more games on PC. And, as we've stated many times before, we are not in a position where we are short on games to play. I've bought more PlayStation ports than you have because there's a number of the ones they've released that were games that I either enjoyed having played them previously on PS4, or games that I know I would enjoy because they're sequels to games I played on PS4. And I mean, like Horizon Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok, which actually, I mean, I played a little bit of that on PS4. I just didn't get super far. Or, like Ratchet and Clank, which I've enjoyed all the previous Ratchet and Clank games I played, so I knew I was going to love that on PC as well. But yeah, this is all positive from the PC side of things. And I know that the hardcore fanboys are not particularly fond of this idea. I mean, that's putting it mildly. Most of them are actually like really mad about it. I mean, there are some that are more reasonable. It's just typically those I wouldn't classify as fanboys so much as fans. And it's definitely a situation where we have to wait and see how much more this kind of stuff is going to happen. But in terms of the future of the PC ports, I've said it before, I will say it again, day and date is coming. It may not be with the next release, it may not be with Ghost of Yotei. They may do... I mean, I guess it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that, like you said, they start with something like 6 months in between releases. If they don't just decide to jump straight into day and date, which I think that there's a reasonable chance. I think that it's more likely that they would shrink the window before they just make a day and date. But I mean, Sony's had this pattern. They started off in 2020 when Horizon Zero Dawn, right before that came out, Herman Hulst saying, we thought that this was going to be a good fit for PC, but this doesn't mean that every PlayStation first-party game is going to come to PC. It's just this one was a good fit. And then in the future, then after a while, it changed to, well, we are going to be releasing our games on PC, but it's not going to be day and date, and there's going to be at least a year in between releases. Except for with our live service games, which will be day and date. Then, not only did they release live service games day and date, one of which, of course, flopped, which was Concord, and the other one was a runaway success, which was Helldivers 2. But then they started doing some of their smaller first-party games, doing Lego Horizon Adventures and Until Dawn Remake or Remaster, whatever you want to call it. And I feel like there was one more too, but I can't remember what it was, if there was. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. But either way, it's been happening. We've had some day and date releases, and as to how well they've done, well, Lego Horizon Adventures just didn't do well, period. Until Dawn Remaster didn't do well, period. So it wasn't specifically, oh, these were failures because they were day and date on PC. No, it's just people weren't that interested. They didn't really care for them. Oh yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered, that was the other one. And that one, I think, just once again, it just hasn't done that well because people didn't really want it. I mean, it looks a lot better than the original version, but a lot of people are just kind of like, I mean, what's the point? You know, it's like, yeah, it looks better, but I can already play it 60 frames per second on my PS5. What's the point? Or, you know, in the case of PC players, you know, we can already play it 120 plus frames per second at 4K in some cases on our PCs. You know, you can play this game on your Steam Deck. What's the advantage apart from it looking a little better? But whatever. Yeah, I mean, I think that the future is PC is going to, that window's going to shrink a little bit first, or, you know, probably shrink down to 6 months like you suggested. And then I think that probably when they do their next new IP, like Wolverine, I think that one's going to be day and date. Either that, or they might do like 2 or 3 that are like a 6-month window, or, you know, shrink the window a little bit each time, and then do day and date with one of their new IPs. But it's coming. Day and date is coming one way or another. And it's better for PlayStation fans and fanboys alike, especially fanboys, to just mentally prepare themselves. And then after a while, they'll come to realize that, you know, it's really not in any way negatively impacting them, like most Xbox gamers have, you know, come to accept. They came to realize when it started happening day and date with PC, as time went on, they just realized, you know, this really doesn't affect me. I can still play my game on my Xbox, and more people get to enjoy it. So, it is what it is. Just let people enjoy games. It's like, hey, more of us get to enjoy a game. If it's great, it's worth it. And if it's not great, well, it is what it is, I guess. But yeah. That's pretty much all my thoughts on that. All right. Do you want to cover this story about that malware game on Steam?
Yeah, so recently, well, I guess I should start back. So there was a game on PC or on Steam called Pirate. I don't know if this was pronounced Pirate Fire or Pirate Fee, but it was a game. It was a free-to-play game, a survival game that you play by yourself or multiplayer with others, and it was sort of a pirate type of game on that free-to-play game. So at some point, users were contacted by Valve, who pulled the game from the store, saying that it contained suspected malware. And this wasn't initially part of the game, but it was taken off following an update that was suspected to contain malicious files. And that's when they sent users who possibly had used an updated version of the game to say, hey, there's a chance that your computer might be infected, and to check your computer, scan it and stuff like that. Use your antivirus, scan it. Consider reformatting your operating system and ensure that there's no malicious software that's on there. And I Well, I've got several thoughts about this instance, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
I am someone who praises Valve and praises Steam a lot. I mean, it's great that they removed it shortly after they found out about this, but they need to have better quality control. They cannot let this happen, because that's a big deal, having basically a Trojan virus embedded in a free-to-play game. That's just it's just not acceptable. I like I'm looking at the article here, and the Valve says, run a full system scan, consider inspect for unexpected or newly installed software. You may consider fully reformatting your operating system to ensure that it doesn't remain on your machine. And like, yes, it's good that at least they're telling people what they would have to do. And yes, these are tips that people should definitely follow. They need to follow this for sure if they installed this game. Honestly, I would probably go as far as just reformatting, because it's better to do that and have to go through the hassle of redoing everything than to not do it and have your information stolen, among other potential problems. But I really think Valve needs to be doing some sort of, I mean, I don't know what exactly they need to do, but they need to do something to make sure this doesn't happen again, because that could be a big problem. And while it's not necessarily their fault entirely, it's still something that just shouldn't be happening. So I'll at least give them praise that they took action very quickly once they found out about it, but I just don't think it should have happened in the first place. So that's what I got.
So my actual knee-jerk reaction was, I thought this was much worse than it was, as far as I thought the game initially released on the store with the malware included, to which I thought, how did this even happen in the first place? Like, how did this get, how was this a game even approved to launch, be released on the store? And then I realized that it was through a patch and update that it happens. And so I feel like I'm a little bit more forgiving of the fact that I don't know how the process works as far as with updates going through games. I don't know, like, if any type of testing or any type of application or update needs to be approved by Valve. But if it is something that Valve lets slip past, like you said, Valve needs to fix that, because that's not something that that's not something that customers and users should be concerned about or need to be concerned about, because especially considering the fact that most games update automatically, and for the most part you really don't even have a choice, and you have to update a game in order to play it a lot of the times, which sometimes is good, but sometimes there are certain times where you would rather just play a certain version of a game, because either some stuff could get patched out that you really don't feel like working with, or a patch could say mess up your mods, because I know that sometimes that has happened with mods, where a new patch just breaks all the mods you had installed before. Yeah. So you might not necessarily want to automatically update, but because you do have to automatically update, Valve should definitely try to have some sort of system set up where they can approve these updates before they go through, just because you don't want anything like this happening again. Now, again, I don't know how things work there, but I like I said, I am glad that it wasn't a game where I thought the worst, where they just initially just sold the game. I mean, it was free, but they just released the game automatically with bugs and viruses and whatnot. And it is good that they did, like you said, warn users, and tell them about the steps they need to take. But this is definitely something where it is a rare Valve L.
Right.
But yeah, so bad situation. Hopefully too many people weren't infected by this, and hopefully whoever was infected didn't have anything seriously damaging or anything that could seriously compromise their computers, because those are the worst types of things to have to deal with.
Right. Agreed. And yeah, that's a good point. I missed the fact that it was um just in the update and that it wasn't the original thing, but definitely they need to make sure that they do something to keep this from happening again. And what exactly that is, I don't know. So, yeah. All right. Well, let's get into our last news topic for the night. Microsoft has revealed that they are going to be using, or that they're currently working on and using, a new type of AI generative model designed for gameplay ideation, as they have put it. Basically, generating both video game visuals and controller actions. There is a bunch of technical speak here. I'm not going to get into all that. I will say that they do have in the article, and this is from Microsoft directly, the blog, they do have videos displaying what some of this AI generated gameplay looks like. But of course, you can obviously add anything to this as you see needed, but my understanding from what I read is essentially that this is something that's just intended to help them with coming up with more ideas and ways to make things work, but it's not necessarily something where, at least at the moment, they're developing full games using AI. They're just kind of using it to aid the process. So, yeah. What are your thoughts?
And also,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and then also, I can't remember if it was here in the link I sent you, or if there was something that I had seen shortly or sometime later on, but there is also talks to be using this AI to get games to run on, or get older games to run on newer hardware. And I don't know if that is essentially sort of, they didn't specify how it was going to work, but I don't know if that's something they were thinking about aiming toward consoles, or specifically, I guess you could say Xbox. We're trying to get older Xbox games to run on newer hardware, or something that would just apply across the board, where even say on PC, where older PC games would be able to run on newer hardware. But yeah, that's it. That's, I guess, a supplement to what you stated about how they're trying to apply this new AI. But as far as my thoughts on it go, I really don't know why we need to have AI in everything, in every aspect, where I really feels like it's really, to a degree, killing creativity. I mean, they say when they want to help with the process and stuff, and I mean, sure, you might say maybe this might help to a degree with efficiency, but I don't know what, I mean, granted, I've never developed a game before, but I don't know how using AI could help with trying to develop a game or anything like that. And I don't know, will this even really help with game development at all? Because would using AI help or help prevent games from being buggy on launch? Would using AI help with ensuring that the games are being stable, that they're optimized? Because I really don't see that being any sort of benefit, because I mean, considering the fact that I can't remember what it was. There's a term. Oh gosh, man, I really wish I remember this term was. And granted, this was really more so with chat language with chat LLMs, but essentially it was just sort of false answers, or I can't remember if it was like called echoes or something like that, but essentially, even though it seemed like it makes sense, the data that the AI provided was false, even though it rationalized the answer that it provided. So I really don't know if something similar could happen like that with game development. Which, I mean, sure, you might say, "Oh, yeah, this is helping us develop the games, and it's helping us be more efficient. It's helping us, be better." And could that really just introduce its own unique problems that you've never encountered before in development? Um, and I mean, and outside of that, without going to conspiracy theory, I just think that AI is entrenched in too many things. And then also with regards to um, having games, or trying to have older games run on newer hardware, that's probably the only thing I could possibly say it could be good as far as trying to, help with compatibility. But would it, really work out well? Or because I mean, I'm not entirely certain if someone said that it's not even completely a compatibility thing, or is rather it's partially being recreated to run. So are you really just having a game that is using AI generated textures and stuff to run on newer hardware, rather than having something that is, I guess you could say, emulated in a sense? If you were, I guess, would you rather have a game that is using some weird, janky AI textures, or just run something that could be just emulated, um, or maybe even just try doing backwards compatibility for games? Like, what is the gain that you would get from doing this? Like, would that be worth doing over just trying to get backwards compatibility, or just trying to emulate it? Um, so that's probably the only acceptable case, but I don't know if that's something that I would say would be worth it in the long run. But just all in all, I'm not a fan of this, and I just don't like this at all. I mean, I feel like this is just unnecessary, and just weird in general.
Yeah. So I agree with everything you said. To kind of add my own thoughts to it more specifically, I could see AI. I mean, for like the making games compatible, old games compatible with new hardware. I could see it being advantageous if it was something along the lines of like basically AI is used to generate a compatibility layer, something like that, in order to make it work. Take essentially generate a new version of Proton that would cause the game to be able to work. If it was able to do something like that, I think that would be great. I mean, like, take the extra work out of it. I mean, in general, Proton's been great. Most games work on the Steam Deck, but obviously depending on whether they actually run well depends on how demanding the game is. I could see AI potentially being a way that they could improve optimization for some games. But with all that being said, I don't like the idea of using AI in general with developing games. Looking at the examples of like in that article they showed, okay, this is the actual game that we played, showing like they did, I think they said it was 11 seconds of actual gameplay. And let me see, I can't remember the name of the game that they were talking about. It was Bleeding Edge.
Bleeding Edge.
So they like did, you know, like 11 seconds as a demonstration for the AI, and then the AI used those 11 seconds in order to generate essentially what they thought based on, you know, whatever models they're using to estimate what the game would look like if it was continued from that gameplay sample. And the thing is that looking at these examples, like it's obviously it's come a long way from where it was before in terms of how the AI generates the stuff. But the AI generated stuff is always just off. It's off. I mean, sometimes it's off by a lot, and sometimes it's off just enough to be like, this just doesn't feel right. This is weird. It's not quite like Black Hole Sun from the from the 90s. If I mean, if you've never seen the music video for that, look it up, from Soundgarden, Black Hole Sun. That is a trippy music video, but it's all, you know, generated. I mean, it wasn't AI generated, you know, it was actually intentionally made. But like looking at the gameplay examples that they showed that were AI generated, it's like all of the animations were just kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Shaky, I guess you could say. Like the way the lines move and stuff, like it just didn't feel right. And I found that also, you know, when you've seen like AI generated videos and that sort of thing, there's always just something a little bit off. Like there was actually a really funny one that I saw that was it was one that, oh no, it's Alex watched on his stream, and I just saw the clip of it. Of it was an AI generated video of ponies defending, or you know, selling people on the PS5, and they're you're talking about the greatest exclusive of PlayStation, 70 million console sales, and it's just like an entirely AI generated video. And anyway, stuff like that where you can tell by looking at it, it's like it looks really close to reality, but it's just off enough to where it's like, I mean, you can tell that it's AI generated. And with this gameplay, of course, this wasn't anywhere near quite that much, but it had a lot more movement, whereas most of those AI generated things have like very, very limited amounts of movement involved in them. And I don't know, these gameplay samples were just strange to me. And I'm not sure how much of them were actual, like, this is the AI guessing how the gameplay would look. So I think that's what it was doing, versus it being something more along the lines of, okay, we'll take this gameplay sample and then create a game based on that, and you can move around with this AI generated game essentially. And I mean, I think it was more the former than the latter, but I don't like it because I really feel like the direction they're trying to move is getting to the point where they use AI instead of people to create these games. And while to some degree, I mean, there are some aspects that I could see that being beneficial, particularly if it was just going through cleaning up code, trying to, you know, make it so that things work better. I don't ever want anything that's 100% AI generated. Even if they improve all the animations and it doesn't have that weird shaky kind of fuzzy look to it. Even if it looks really good, I just don't want that happening, because you lose something when you don't have that human, you know, the internal spirit of a person that goes into, that's involved in the creation of something. Even like the most bland, basic, generic looking games, there's still more to them in terms of that human creativity than you get with AI generated stuff. Now, granted, There are, of course, developers who will just reuse a bunch of assets and, it's not all that creative. They're not putting in all the work, but you can still look back at the original resources and say these original resources were created by someone. And you can still tell, even if the game itself looks and feels generic. I'd rather have something that looks and feels generic than have something that's AI generated and just lacks that soul. And I feel like even the most bland and boring games I've seen, like that Mind's Eye game that we saw at the PlayStation State of Play last week, it's still like you still could tell that there was a human creativity put into it. I mean, even outside of the cutscenes, yes, it was generic. It was very GTA like and uninspired as far as I was concerned when it came to the gameplay. But it's still, you could still tell that people created it and that it wasn't just something made by, artificial intelligence. So yeah, the TLDL of that is I don't like AI usage in games unless it's just used for things like compatibility layers and optimizing code.
And you actually reminded me of a couple different things. And I guess the first one is that, I don't think this technically really counts as AI, but the only real way that something could be tolerated is through procedural generation, because you have that type of aspect in roguelikes, and that's something that's fine because even though it's random, there is still at least some cohesion. And in fact, there was a video actually a long time ago because something similar happened. There was a channel I watched that talks about like different Kickstarters that are possibly scams and stuff like that. And there was a sort of console called OTOM, which was the idea was like having a console that used AI to make games. Yeah, no one in their right mind, really funded it. The game, the thing flopped, but the person talked about the fact that think about like this with creativity versus using AI. Imagine Super Mario Maker. Do you think you could have any of the levels that were made by real people, especially the ones that have those real weird mechanics and like you have to do all these types of jumps and stuff? Could an AI do something like that by itself? No, that's the type of creativity that comes from a human. So even if you have AI trying to do some sort of procedural generation, you won't have that creativity where something's like, okay, those neat tricks, that's something that only a human mind could think of, because AI just takes what's already there and tries to do something with it. And it might be random. It may not make sense. It might just work well enough that it counts as a level, but it won't have anything inspired in it.
Right. Yeah, it's like
that's just something I wanted to tackle.
You could never. I firmly believe that an AI could never make a Kojima game, make an actual game that's as creative as what he does. Because the thing about this man is that, yes, his stuff is weird, but he writes it in such a way that it makes sense within the universe of the game. And furthermore, mechanically, those games are just like, this is undoubtedly created by someone who is really smart and really creative, and they came up with these cool ideas of how to sometimes do mechanics that nobody's thought of. Like Death Stranding, the mechanics in that game, while on the surface they seem like they're overly simple, when you play it, it's like this game has a lot of depth to it, and it's super interesting as a game, in addition to the story itself. I remember when I first saw the trailer for Death Stranding, of course, none of us had any idea what the game was about. Even by the time we got the last trailer, nobody knew what the game was about. They had theories, but nobody had any idea until they actually played the game. And then, as with most of Kojima's stories, really with all of his stories, it made sense. And I mean, ultimately, this comes down to, of course, you and I are both coming from a Christian perspective, and we believe that men and women, that all people are made in the image of God, and that's where that creativity comes from. It's because we have a creative creator who created everything, that we also have that's one of the aspects of the image of God, is that creativity that comes out. Yes, some people are more creative than others, but everyone has still something that distinguishes them from just fake intelligence. So that's all I have.
Nothing additional from me.
All right. So before we go into our recommendations and dissuasions, let's talk about just a couple of fun extra topics. First of all, actually, I did get a question from someone for us. How many holes does a straw have?
Wait, what?
How many holes does a straw have? Because, I mean, it's a thinker.
Well,
Does it have one hole? Does it have two holes?
I mean, well, I would technically say two because they're both ends.
But it's one continuous hole. I would say one, because it's one hole that goes all the way down. I mean, I guess I could see what you're saying, because realistically, you think about it, a hole doesn't necessarily have to, even though it's one hole going down, it does have a hole at the end that is separated. Whereas, like if you're digging a hole in the ground, it's not necessarily going out the other end unless you're digging all the way through the planet, And as far as we know, no one's ever done that before. So I guess, yeah, you could argue it either way. It's an interesting philosophical question, I guess you could say. Yeah, so I guess I'm gonna agree with you. I'm gonna say two.
Yeah, I definitely understand the fact that if counting it as one continuous one, but it's really only just the fact. It's only because of the other end that makes me say two.
Right.
Because if it was just one straight down and it reached the bottom, I would say yes. But I just feel like because there are two ends to the straw, it counts as two. And because they both can be exchanged either way, something can go in one end and come out the other, and vice versa.
Right. And if we were to say this is going through the planet Earth, there's a hole on each side. So
that's true. Yeah.
You're digging all the way through to China. You have a hole here, and then you have a hole in China. It's two separate holes that just connect to each other. So, never mind the magma and everything, that would be in between, or, however that would work depending on where you are on the Earth, all that. But yeah. We'll just pretend that doesn't exist. Either that, or it's really actually like the journey to the center of the Earth, where there is no like molten core, and it's just like basically an entire world in the middle of the Earth. So, all right, good question. That question was from Beer Money Vic, who of course I interviewed previously. So, thank you, Vic, for that question. And this next question was not one that was addressed to us, but was a question from another guy I interviewed, Lem. And so the question he asked, this was when he asked to Married to the Games a couple weeks ago, and I thought it was a good question. He says, I've been exploring cozy gaming, and I found that many people define it differently. Some people feel that The Sims is cozy, while others swear that Elder Scrolls makes them feel calm and cozy. I found a few, but was wondering what your version of a cozy game is, and any suggestions you have for a game or two.
So, initially I would say that it would be something where it's a game that is just a type of game, some sort of genre. But honestly, I would say that a cozy game would be a game that is really dependent on the person, and it's a game where you just it's a relaxing type of game, a game where you can sort of just turn your mind off and just essentially be on autopilot while you play the game. Because while initially a cozy game in my mind would be something like, say, Stardew Valley, like that's something that personally for me I would say is a cozy game. I could also say that Metroid Zero Mission is a cozy game because it's a game, well, mainly because I know that game inside and out essentially at this point. I could literally just play the game on autopilot essentially and just complete the game without doing too much thinking. I think if you have to do too much thinking, say like for example in a Souls game where you need to be focused, you need to be fully attentive to the game, you need to be looking at everything and be on your guard all the time. I mean, I don't think I would find that hard to describe that as being cozy because you can't just be relaxed and calm. I mean, unless of course you're just that good at the game where you're just
or you're just super
able to be-
familiar with it.
Yeah, yeah. Where your heart rate is just like so calm and consistent, and you're just not caring at all what's going on. But I mean, I do know that some people, like long time ago, when they got home from work, they would play something like Battlefront 2, Star Wars Battlefront 2, and that I guess you could say was their type of cozy game. So I would say that a cozy game would really be something where it's a game where you can just relax. It's a game where you just kick back, where you can just be comfortable, just play the game. You're not doing something where you're too focused, where you're not on edge. It's just something that you just play to relax and have some fun. I mean, granted, I would say that most games you play would be fun, but just something where it's not something that would stress you out at all.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I think it could also be something that's like comforting in a way, you know, so like, especially if it's a game that kind of helps you to get through like a tragic time in your life, or, you know, just a difficult time, whether, you know, because of just having struggles in general with something in your life, or because of losing a family member, or, you know, a loved one in general, you know, various things like that. And to some degree, I can look at a game like Destiny 2 as being a game like that for me. But at the same time, it's also hard for me to call it a cozy game, just because, while yes, it was absolutely something that really helped me after I lost my dad. You know, I was playing it a lot. It's not something where I'm like, I mean, it's also one where I've definitely had times where I've just gotten mad at the game, super mad at the game. And if I was gonna, you know, like point to another one that was helpful during a time like that, I mean, you know, that same time frame, I replayed all the Arkham games, and those were definitely something that helped me a lot. And when my mom died, it was different because like I couldn't really, I think I had a harder time really focusing on games at that point. It was hard to really get into anything. I mean, I know I was playing a game up to the point where she died, when she was, you know, very sick, and it was just like whenever I needed to step away, I'd, you know, be playing something. But I think probably if I was going to point to a game that's kind of like something that's always more of a cozy, like I could just jump into this and just play it and not think about it and enjoy it start to end, whatever, probably be SteamWorld Dig, because that one's one, it's, of course, it's a Metroidvania. It's short. The loop of, you know, digging and you know, finding minerals and then selling them to get upgrades, and you know, slowly working all the way down until you get to the very end. It was just, it's like the kind of loop that for me was definitely more calm. I feel like there might be another game in there as well, but I would say definitely SteamWorld Dig would be mine. Chrono Trigger would probably be in there if it wasn't for the fact that every time I boot that one up again, I'm just like, I played this game so many times, I need to play something else. But yeah. To some degree, Dark Souls is kind of becoming a game like that for me. And just more because I, after playing it multiple times, like I've become familiar enough to where it doesn't typically stress me out. Now, granted, that's just with Dark Souls 1, not 2 or 3, especially not 3. And 2, obviously, I haven't played yet, so I don't have any opinion on that. But, yeah. Yeah, that's... It's not really a cozy game, but, it's also something that's just like, I like this game. It's fun. I like it.
Yeah. I think that no matter how many times I play Dark Souls 3, that's never a game that I'll ever say it's a cozy game. Just because, I mean, even when I'm just playing it to have fun, I'm not relaxed enough to just have to call it cozy. It's just something where, yeah, it's a game I'm playing and I'm enjoying it. I'm not gonna get relaxed though.
Yeah.
My blood pressure won't be going down.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Did you have a discussion topic as well?
Yeah, and this one kind of it has two questions in it. But essentially it revolves around when you first play a game, or essentially during the initial playthrough of a game. And it's, when do you think you're in a good place to judge the game, as far as whether you think it's a good game or something you like or not? And then how long do you think you should have to play a game before it gets good? Because I know that sometimes there might be a game and you're playing it, you might not be enjoying it, but then someone says, oh, keep going, it gets good at this point. But do you think that there should be a point that you should have to play, or do you think that a game should pretty much near the beginning already be good enough?
That's a good question. I know this is kind of a cop-out, but I really do think it varies from game to game. Now, if it's a 10-hour game and you have to get halfway through the game for it to get good, like if it's just bad before that, I think that you can judge pretty early whether or not you like it. But one example of a game where I almost abandoned it was Persona 4 Golden. Because you have to go through basically 2 hours to get to like the real, well, I guess it's maybe not quite that long, but like the introductory stuff, it takes like an hour to hour and a half before you finally get to a point where you're really getting to actually like get into the combat and everything else. And it was really hard to get through the first time. And I still find it way too long for that opening section. Like, I think it's important as far as what it sets up, but that's a game where, yes, it's like 100-hour game. So from that standpoint, it's not very much time, but it was really hard to get into. Whereas you compare it with Persona 5 Royal, or, Persona 5 in general, and you're in the action within 5 minutes. Or, another example that I think is one that actually was worse for me, although I haven't I haven't gotten super far in the game yet, is the first Ni no Kuni, because the opening hour of that game is slow. I mean, you technically do more than you do in Persona 4 Golden, but it's still just like, I'm not having a good time here. I'm just feeling like this is dragging on way too long to get to like the main part of the game, because you don't even get to do a single fight until like an hour into the game. And I mean, even Persona 4 Golden, you at least got like 1 or 2 small fights before then. It was just that you weren't getting into like the main action of the game. You're like getting into the main stuff to where you were doing the kind of stuff you would be doing the rest of the game. But then there's other times where like I don't know. It's so hard to say from game to game. I think also some of it is, I mean, so much of it really just depends on the game. And I think it's kind of you have to judge whether or not it's something that is going to, I mean, like if you play for an hour in a game and you're just hating it, then you probably should step away. I mean, it may be a situation where you just need to put it down because you're just not into it at that moment, and that if you come back later, you may end up absolutely loving it. And I've had that happen with games like Infamous. But then there's other situations where you play for an hour, you find that it's just like, I guess I should say, I think there's a difference between if it's a game that's just not grabbing you versus a game that you're just really disliking. And I think that really, if you play for 2-3 hours and you find that the game is either not grabbing you at all, or especially if it's a game that you're just really not liking, then you probably should just not play it. And there can be situations where maybe you just need to step away and come back to it later. And that's really kind of an individual decision. But I've had several games where I had to step away from the game because I just was not getting into it, or I just wasn't liking it. And then I eventually came back and it's like, oh, I love this game. So I think really you just have to ask yourself, do I want to give this game another try later on? Or do I just want to be completely done with it? Is the reason I'm not getting into this game because it's just not grabbing me and I'm just not in the right mindset for it? Or is it because it's just a bad game? And I think Trek to Yomi is just a bad game. But and that one I played for like 6 hours. I'm like 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through the game, and I don't like it. So anyway, but yeah, that's essentially my answer to the question. My long answer.
That distinction you made about whether you dislike a game or it's just not grabbing you, that's something I never thought about. I think that's a great distinction. And honestly, if I had to think back, I would probably say most of the time where I wasn't really feeling a game probably was more so the fact that it just wasn't grabbing me rather than I outright despised it. Because I mean, thinking back about it, I would say the first part of Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time is just it just drags on until you finally leave Kakariko Village. Not Kakariko Village.
Kokiri Forest.
No, that is, yeah, the Kokiri Forest. I feel like after you leave that area is when the game actually starts to get good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really just the game. As far as I'm concerned, it's just the game doesn't grab me until after you leave that point. And also similar to Twilight Princess, like the first intro part of the game is just so dull to me. But after you get out of that area, then the game starts being fun. But, you know, I compare that with, say, Breath of the Wild, where I think that right off the bat, even when you're doing just the sort of tutorial areas on the plateau, it's still fun. And, you know, and then once you actually leave the plateau, you're thinking, oh my goodness, there's more. Like, there's so much out here to do. And that, what I just did was just a small part of the overarching world. So I think that's probably one of the best ways in the series. But then, I mean, compared to just say the original NES Zelda, where right off the bat you're in the adventure. Like, there's no story going on. Take your sword. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this. Go out there. Have some fun. So I guess it really just depends. But then also, I definitely agree with you saying that a game not grabbing you and coming back later and you might enjoy it really is true, because Stardew Valley, I played that game. I probably spent 17 hours or so playing that game, I didn't get it at all, and I was not really enjoying it. But then once I played it with friends, and I actually understood the mechanics of the game and how everything functions. Once it clicked in my head, I started to enjoy it more, and it became one of my favorite games. And in a similar sense, No Man's Sky, I played that. I really didn't get it much. I played it. I really wasn't understanding it. But then once I played it some more with friends as well, I started understanding how the game worked, and then I started to enjoy it more. So I definitely agree with you that a lot of the times it could be something where the game just hasn't grabbed our attention yet. It's not interesting us yet, and it might not be a case where we hate it. I mean, maybe sometimes, like you said with Trek to Yomi, it might be a case where we might hate a game, but it probably could be more often than not the game's just not catching our attention. But similar to what you said, though, if you're playing a game that's 10 hours long and you're 5 hours in, and you're still not enjoying it, you probably are most likely in a good position to judge whether it's actually good or not, or at least whether you're enjoying it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Anything else before we get into our recommendations and dissuasions?
No, sir.
All right. Start us off.
All right. So my first recommendation, I've got two, is going to be the Hercules MS533B mic stand. Like I said before, it's a very solid mic stand, very sturdy, and I really love the easy clamp that it has. It's just enjoyable, and I like the fact that you can hide the boom stand when you close it up, so that way there's not the boom part's not just moving around. It's really nice and convenient, and it keeps everything all compact in that sense. So just overall good mic stand, and yeah, I like that. My other recommendation is if you buy a game off of Instant Gaming, be sure to check every parameter and ensure that it is compatible with your region. One of the games I bought on there, it seemed like it was compatible, but then when I went to redeem the code, it said that it was not available in my country, and I was very confused. I was speaking with customer service, who thankfully they were able to just see that it wasn't working, and they were able to give me a refund on the game. But later on, I saw that the rating was for PEGI, and they were like, oh, it's for Europe only, that's why. So if you're buying a game on Instant Gaming, it's not like buying it on Fanatical or Green Man Gaming, where you're pretty much guaranteed to have it work in your region. Make sure you check and make sure that the game you want to buy is actually for your region.
Good recommendations. All right, well, I also have a few recommendations. First of all, because I forgot to mention it earlier, if you are interested in getting Metal Gear Solid Delta for PC, Green Man Gaming has it for 25% off for XP members. So I've already taken advantage of that, and yeah, deluxe edition. But 25% off. That's a great deal. And even if by some chance my computer doesn't run it well, I can always play it later when I have a stronger computer. I'm not going to upgrade for that game, but whenever I get to, more likely than not, it's going to run just fine on my computer, and I'm not too concerned about it, but we'll see how things go. My next recommendation is the TV series Psych, because it is hilarious, and oh man, I love this show so much. We're going through it again right now, and it's been several years since the last time we went through it, probably longer, but yeah, it's hilarious, and it holds up extremely well. The series I think ended, I want to say like 2012, give or take. It might have been later than that. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up, but yeah, it's a great series. Super funny. It is a great example of the Sherlock trope, but it's done so well. So it's great. As a side note with the Sherlock trope. So have you ever watched the BBC Sherlock TV series?
Yes, I watched only like the first 2 or 3 seasons, but I have watched it.
Gotcha. So something that, you know, like it always bugged me when I originally watched the show, and then I eventually figured it out. The theme song, like when I listened to it, I'm like, man, this sounds so familiar. It is almost exactly the overworld theme from Final Fantasy IV. Listen to both of
I
them.
didn't look this up.
Listen to both of them. It's like when I figured that out, I think it was because we're also watching through that on Fridays, because, you know, that's one of the things I got for us for Christmas. And it's been many years since we watched through it, and I think we might never have actually seen season 4. But anyway, yeah, when I noticed that, I just, you know, we had just watched the episode, and, you know, I heard the theme song again. I played the Final Fantasy IV overworld theme for my wife, and she's like, "Wow, that really is the same, pretty much." I mean, it's like the Sherlock the Sherlock theme is missing some notes in there, but it is the Final Fantasy IV overworld theme, and I really want to find out if that was intentional, like if that was the inspiration, you know, where they got it from. Because it's obviously not exactly the same, but it's almost identical, just with fewer notes. You know, because it has like more silent, or more like periods with no notes in them, whereas, you know, the overworld theme from Final Fantasy IV, dun 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 da 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 da. Of course, every time I hear that, I just like, it gives me warm fuzzies, because I love the Final Fantasy IV soundtrack. But yeah.
I definitely agree with you. I just pulled it up and listened to it, and you're on the nose. that it does sound like the Final Fantasy IV overworld theme.
I'm sure that someone else has discovered this. I cannot possibly be the only person who noticed this. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, how someone figured out a long time ago that Robo's theme from Chrono Trigger, which, you know, I can't remember if you've actually played Chrono Trigger or not, but Robo's theme, very, very similar to "Never Gonna Give You Up, Never Gonna Let You Down." Yeah, it's very, very similar. And Yasunori Mitsuda has said, no, I did not get it from this song, but it's very I almost would not be surprised if he didn't realize that he was inspired by it. Now, of course, then you have Jack Black, who intentionally rickrolled us with the Peaches song. Peaches, it is the same song, but he did that on purpose to rickroll us. So when he wrote the Peaches song. But yeah, anyway. Going back to recommendations, I have two more. One is Liquid Death, which is like a flavored sparkling water, seasoned with agave nectar. So instead of being like some artificial sweetener, it's actually something else. Not super sweet, but it's a good substitute for soda when you're trying to get off of it. It's just like a nice alternative. You know, gives you the fizz, a little bit of sweetness, but not too much, and no artificial stuff. So it's better from that standpoint. And I believe that they're also one of the few aluminum cans that actually doesn't coat the inside of their can with plastic, which most aluminum cans do that nowadays. So if you're also trying to avoid consuming from plastic as much as possible, that's helpful. But lastly, I just got to recommend Neo. Neo is basically Samurai Souls, but I am really enjoying it, and even though I'm currently stuck, I don't feel like it's impossible. I just have to, I think I need to watch someone do it to get a good idea of how to best handle it. Because like, I've looked at a couple strategies. The number one thing that people keep saying is use salt on the enemy to wear down their ki, so that they are easier to, you know, knock down, and then you can do damage to them. But honestly, the biggest problem I'm having more than anything is just keeping away from the enemy enough, and I'm not sure if it's better to target them and then try to keep away from them, because that seems to be harder, or if it's just keeping as far away from them as I can until I get the opportunity, the little opening here and there to attack. Kind of similar to what I had to do during the spear phase of the Soul of Cinder, where I was basically running away the entire time during that phase until finally switched over to something that was easier to deal with, like the sorcery phase. That was glorious. I was so glad when I figured out how to properly avoid the sorcery attacks on that fight. But yeah, anyway, Neo's great. I'm enjoying it, I'm loving it, and it runs wonderfully on the Steam Deck. So that's what I got for recommendations.
Very nice. And regarding the liquid
death,
you said liquid death. Is it just like one flavor, or are there
several?
There's
a bunch of flavors. There's various like fruit ones, like this one's mango. There's cherry, there's melon, there's lime, there's like just a plain one that's really just sparkling water. They have like a line of teas as well, which I accidentally got a box of because I ordered some from Amazon. I ordered a grapefruit flavored one, and then they accidentally sent me a box of berry teas. And it's like I mean, they're pretty like watered down in terms of what you get. Like there's very little flavor, but it's just enough to where it's like, okay, it helps with the cravings. And since I really am just trying to completely eliminate soda from my diet and don't want to buy the stuff that's like super expensive, this is something that is a nice aid for that purpose.
Okay. I'll definitely look into that then, just to give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, the cans that you can buy at the store, it's like, at least around my area, it's typically like $2 for a can, and it's almost 20 ounces, so yeah. They also have some, you can get pouches of a powder that's electrolyte stuff, You just add to water. I mean, I've added it to like mineral water so I get the sparkling thing, but then it fizzes up a little bit too much and it's a little more of a pain to deal with. So I've just been adding it to regular water, and that's been fine. But even though I drink a fair amount of water, I usually drink about 4 bottles of water a day. This one that I have is about 32 ounces, but that still doesn't give electrolytes, which are also helpful for hydration, and so you're just missing a little bit there that you get otherwise. But anyway, doesn't matter. All right. Dissuasion. Or dissuasions.
My dissuasion is going to be, don't neglect your equipment. And this is going to be something that sort of applies across many fields. Primarily the one I was initially thinking of was just with, say, audio equipment. If you've got your mic stands, like don't mistreat them by just over tightening components. Don't do anything that might strip a screw or anything like that, because the biggest thing that determines how long you can use your equipment is how well you take care of it. So if you're being careless with your equipment, even if it's something that you're spending more money on, so sure, it's going to be inherently more durable and than say something that is cheaper. You'll reduce its life if you are just careless with it. So definitely don't mishandle it in that aspect. And also, with regards to hardware as well, if you have a PC, don't do anything careless with it. From time to time, it might help if you clean out your PC as well. Don't do anything like leave it on a carpet where it could suffocate. And if you're on console, if you have a console like on a shelf or something like that, or some sort of entertainment stand, don't have it tucked away in a small corner where there won't be sufficient airflow. And that's primarily if you're using with a more modern console, because older consoles don't have that problem.
Yeah.
But if you're using something that has airflow, don't keep it tucked in somewhere compact. So just don't be neglectful with your stuff. Be reasonable, and that way it'll last longer.
Definitely good advice. All right. Well, my dissuasions are going to be very specific to specific situations. First of all, in Neo, do not use your I think there's samurai skill points. I can't remember if it's actually called samurai or something else. But anyway, there's certain skill points that you have, not the ones for leveling up, but these skill points can be applied to learning different skills. Make sure don't use them without paying attention to which weapon you're applying them to. I made the mistake when I was playing at first, and I realized that I had all these skill points that I hadn't used. I started applying them and did not realize that I was applying them to the single sword, which I don't even use. And so I applied a bunch of them all on that one thing. It's like, I don't use a single sword at all. And because of the fact that I didn't yet have access to the dojo in the blacksmith, I didn't have a way to reset anything. And so I had to just finish out with what I had, finish out that first level, the first mission. And then once I finished it, I was able to go to the dojo, purchase a thing to reset everything. And unfortunately, that made it so that it also reset all of my levels. So I had to reallocate those points. And then I could apply the skill points to the different weapons that I actually wanted to apply them to. So, but yeah, it was just a dumb mistake. And thankfully, it was easy enough to fix. It wasn't like my mistake in Dark Souls on the Switch where I applied any points at all to resistance, which is a worthless stat to apply anything to. Though I will say I've been halfway contemplating jumping back into my Switch version of the game just to see if I can finish out the game with the mistakes I made and where I applied my stats. Because I know the game well enough to where like I could definitely go through, I could probably complete it. And it would just be, okay, I'm going to have to take my time. I'm going to have to be a little more careful about how I apply my points going forward, apply my souls. But like, I know all the bosses. I know where everything, or, all the important stuff is, how to get to all the bosses, how to get through all the areas. So I absolutely could do all of that. It's just a question of how painful it would be trying to do that with my terrible build. So we'll see. Maybe I'll do that during my extra live stream. Just hop in and say, hey, I have a terrible build here from not understanding well enough how the game works. Let's see how much further I can get, because I still have probably like at least 10 bosses to go through. I have like 60 hours in the game, and the last boss I beat was Pinwheel. And I definitely haven't gotten as far as, I haven't got through Sen's Fortress, let alone Honorlando and so on. Yeah, I think that's about as far as I've gotten. So, but it's like, I know the map well enough. I know where everything is more or less. So it might be worth just messing around with it just for fun and see where I can get. See what I can do without soul duplication. Because it's like, yeah, soul duplication is a piece of cake, but it would be more fun to play it without that, because I only did that just for giggles because it was my third time playing through. So we'll see what happens. But yeah. And then the other very specific situation is with Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, do not turn off VSync in your control panel, because it's not worth the extra frame rate when you're getting that screen tearing. The screen tearing makes it harder to play, and it's better to just keep it at 60. It runs great that way. 60 is still great, and the game is just super fun. So that is what I have.
Very good dissuasions.
All right. Where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel, iamxeracon. That's iamxeracon. So youtube.com/iamxeracon. Earlier today, I put out a video just talking about a new anti-Power World patent that Nintendo had made, which is sort of a follow-up to when they made back in December, which is pretty much them patenting the ability to catch, essentially catch Pokemon. They're patenting that idea and mechanic. So that's just my thoughts on that, and also how imagining how if they patented any other mechanic and how that would impact games that we know and love, and how that's something we shouldn't tolerate. So that's what I did. Next video is a more lighthearted one. It's something that I was going to make before, but I got caught up with this one, so that one probably might come out this weekend, but we'll see.
Good stuff. Yeah, I listened to that while I was shoveling snow, and that made me think about one of the free games I think I got through Amazon that's on GOG. That's like a Pokemon-like game that I was kind of thinking about. Maybe I should install that and try it out, see if it's any good. I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to look it up. But
Nexomon?
I don't think that's what it was.
I can't remember if that was the one that they made.
I mean, it might be. I'll have to look it up after we're done with the podcast. I'll double check my GOG library and I could say for sure. But yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, as for me, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel at the Frozen Gamer 87, and nothing. Let's see here. No, I didn't put anything up this week. But next week, I'm going to have my Steam Deck OLED versus Switch OLED comparison for Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. And that one is really cool. And I'm so glad that the audio came out great this time, because this is what I've been wanting. Having the great audio, not having to worry about kid noise or any other noise in the background. And it's like finally having a way to get that so that I can record at the right time. It's just a matter of having time to record in general that has been lacking, which is why I have not yet started working on Freedom Wars, but I'm hoping to record that one next. Either way, the Hellblade comparison is going to be released on Monday the 24th. Yes, 24th. Monday, February 24th. That'll be releasing. 7 a.m. Central Time. And then I also have a YouTube cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. That's YouTube at NABD Cooking. And I just put up today my recipe for Thai curry chicken pizza, which is based off of, it's using green Thai curry sauce. And it is super good. It's very easy, very delicious, great fusion dish. And I highly recommend checking it out. If not, also making it. If you have the ability to do so, it's well worth it. And then next week, I should have my recipe going up for smoked pork roast, which I haven't decided if I'm going to re-record the intro and say that it's smoked pulled pork, because really that's what it ended up being, was smoked pulled pork with the way it fell apart. But either way, that'll be next week for that. And then for this channel, or for the podcast, we have, of course, the main channel at the Orange Box Podcast on YouTube, as well as the clips channel for the podcast at the Orange Box Pod Clips. And the podcast itself goes up every Friday, 7 a.m. Central Time, barring any major issues, which unfortunately I keep missing things or something else gets messed up. Last week, I accidentally uploaded, I thought that I rendered the entire video, and it turns out I only rendered a section of the video, and I didn't realize it until the next morning when it went up, and my wife told me, oh, it's only 18 minutes long. So I ended up having to redo that, and yeah, anyway, the goal at least is for it to be 7 a.m. Central Time every Friday. And the video version, not only can you see our beautiful faces, but you can also see gameplay clips from all the games we've been talking about, as well as trailers and that sort of thing from games that we are discussing. And the Orange Box Pod Clips channel, of course, is where we have just the individual segments broken up, and those go up usually on Friday. Sometimes they're spread out throughout the week following the podcast. It kind of just depends on how it's set up. For now, I'm just putting all of them up at the same time, mostly because that way it just helps to put content out on that channel to hopefully get some views and get some subscribers, that sort of thing. But yeah, the Podclips channel is a great place if you want to just listen to individual segments rather than a 2.5-hour podcast. So, but then we also have the audio only version of the podcast, which goes up every Friday at 12 a.m. Central Time. And that is live on all major podcast platforms, including YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, etc. Basically any major podcast platform, you can find it. And it's all the same content that's in the video version, just not the video. So, of course, if you'd like to contact us, you can send us an email, theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at theorangeboxpod, or you can just comment on the video version or the clips themselves, and we can, of course, reach out to you in those situations. We'll be sure to respond, whether it's simply responding in the comments or actually talking about it on the podcast. So that, I believe, is everything. So, any final thoughts?
No, sir.
Well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is iamxeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, find a day to rest and take it. Orange Box Podcast out.